the conflict will end. I think gasoline prices will come back to where they were or perhaps lower. As they did, President Trump has shown that he is good at getting energy prices down, and that our energy dominance agenda has the lowered prices.
Well, there's a lot of conversation in Congress about this and potential changes in regulations and some proposals to do things with the oil sector that could help Americans, although there are varying opinions on all of that. So joining me now to discuss is a Democrat from California's 17th District, Congressman Ro Khanna, who's been thinking a lot about this. Congressman Ro Khanna, it's great to have you back on Inside the Issues. Thanks for being with us.
Amrit, really a pleasure.
You know, you've been thinking a lot about this, as you did the last time we saw a big shock to the oil market in 2022. Back then, as now, you have essentially two proposals on this, one of which would be taxing these big fossil fuel companies for windfalls and profits, which you say we're seeing, and also, you know, talking about having more with the oil prices. But let's just start by talking about the windfall tax. Where do you see here with the oil companies? You say they're making money on this?
Well, Amrit, I appreciate your pointing out that I had this proposal in 2022 when the price spiked because of the Ukraine war, and now it's spiking because of the illegal, immoral war in Iran. It shows it's not partisan. I proposed this when President Biden was president, and now I'm proposing it when Trump is president. Basically, we're saying that the cause of the price increases are the war, but the beneficiaries are the big oil companies. They're making billions in profits. And what this would do is tax those profits and give a rebate check to every Californian so that they're compensated for that huge bill they're facing at the pump.
What do you say to folks when they say, listen, we tried something like this in 1980, it didn't work? And one of the things that I know you've advocated for is to see more of a shift to renewables and green energy. But oil companies say, I mean, we need these profits, which are cyclical. If you take them from us now, we might not have them later. We want to invest that money to get you, Representative Khanna, what you want, the clean energy. I mean, what do you say to them?
Well, first of all, it only applies to the big oil companies. Secondly, the reality is that they're not the ones investing in clean energy. That was taking place because of the Inflation Reduction Act, and we need to restore the electric vehicle tax credit, the solar tax credits, the investment tax credits. And third, the production is at a record high in the United States of America. The problem isn't that we're not producing enough. It gets to my second proposal. The problem is we're exporting it. And if we banned the export like we did before 2015, we would actually see gas prices come down. So the two basic proposals: one, tax the profits of these big oil companies to give every Californian a rebate check. And two, make sure that we're not selling our oil to everyone else, sell it in America, and that would bring down prices.
Your oil export ban that you're proposing as well, I mean, our allies see that and they say, oh no, we need some of that. And it's also a soft power sort of tool for the United States to be providing some of this oil. And there's also this macroeconomic argument around this too, where it's like, you know, if you keep that oil off the market, then in some way it'll reverberate and come back and get passed on to consumers. How do you think about those sorts of conversations around an oil export ban?
Well, we don't ban gas, so that's what a lot of our European allies need, and that's what our Ukrainian allies need. And the reality is that before 2015, we had an oil export ban, and that by definition would mean we have more oil here. The refineries would retrofit, and so you would see the price of oil go up in other parts of the world, and you'd see the price of oil come down here. Now, you know, you could argue that we don't want gas prices to come down. I believe we do, but it would be helping Americans, and the price would go up elsewhere around the world. But to me, that's a worthwhile trade-off.
You know, this is all about this economic populism and you know, patriotism that you've been talking about in a lot of different ways. And that includes, you know, the future of work, something you think about a lot. You think about artificial intelligence a lot. You do represent Silicon Valley in Congress, those counties that comprise Silicon Valley. You're also the chair of the Select Committee on China in Congress. And so AI is a very interesting thing here. I mean, the future of work, how do we regulate AI to some extent that it protects the future of work, the integrity of work, without letting China move ahead with artificial intelligence? How do you think about that tension point?
I'm the ranking member, top Democrat. I'm hoping for a promotion as chair when we take back the House in November.
That's correct.
But the reality is, I gave a major speech at Stanford recently and did a fireside chat with Jensen Huang and did a chat with Bernie Sanders, and I laid out 7 principles for AI. I said I'm not an AI accelerationist, I'm not an AI doomer. I'm an AI democratist. Let me give you three of those principles. One, we need to make sure human beings are in the loop. You can't have AI making decisions about your health care, about your finances, about whether to send someone to jail, about whether to have a military strike. Two, we need to make sure that humans are in the loop in jobs. I don't want a plane without pilots. I don't want trucks without drivers. And the technology should be making workers better. And three, we need to make sure that there's safety. We have electricity regulation, nuclear regulation, aviation regulation. We need to have regulations for safety for AI.
Along this line of economic patriotism is these conversations around a wealth tax. You've teamed up with Bernie Sanders to talk about 5% level on billionaires. We're seeing that in California too. One time in California, one-time 5% tax. It's a ballot measure that likely voters will be voting on here. Meanwhile, yours on the federal level is ongoing. Obviously, a lot of people, support this, and billionaires say this is no good. We're going to leave the state. We're going to leave the country. How do we pull something like this off without then having that flight of capital ultimately?
Yeah, it's a great question. First of all, it's a simple question. Are you for the billionaires or are you for 2 million Californians having health care and 200,000 healthcare workers? To me, I appreciate that the billionaires have built companies and built wealth, but I think someone can have 19 billion instead of 20 billion if it means everyone having healthcare in California and healthcare workers. In terms of capital flight from the country, that's almost impossible because we're one of the few countries that taxes based on nationality, not based on territory. So even if you move to some other country, you literally have to give up American citizenship to not be taxed. And that's like giving up Roman citizenship. Who would want to do it? And by the way, if you did do that, you'd be taxed on an exit tax of 40%. So the nation, it's much easier. California, and other more challenging because people can move to Texas or Florida. But the reality is when we tried higher taxes in Massachusetts, they made those arguments and that people didn't leave. And, I just talked to Jensen and he'll tell you that the AI revolution is happening in our state, that few billionaires may leave, but that the vast majority of people want to invest in California because of the ecosystem. We have attract the best and brightest. We have the best UC system, the research universities, the companies, and we can design this tax in a way that doesn't tax founders' shares and doesn't tax paper billionaires, so that it's a rational way of doing it.
A lot of people hear you talk. People notice that you've been in South Carolina a little bit. They say this is a guy that could and is making moves like he could maybe be or run for president. You going to run?
Well, we'll see after the midterms. I believe I have an economic vision. I call it economic patriotism that really can reindustrialize this country and that can tackle the economic divides. I grew up in Pennsylvania, but I've represented Silicon Valley and I've been around the country. But my first priority is to get Hakeem Jeffries elected as Speaker of the House, and I'll be campaigning up and down California to make sure we pick up 5 seats so that we can do that.
Well, we've been watching you having these conversations in kinds of places that people would find uncomfortable. You're showing up, you're answering questions like you are here. We really appreciate that, Representative Khanna. Great to talk to you. Hope you do it again sometime soon.
Well, congrats on all your success, Amrit. It's a must stop for any governor candidate, so appreciate it.
Well, we're starting to see a little bit of that, and from your mouth to their ears. Representative Khanna, great to have you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's Representative Khanna, and of course, we got much more here, including, as Representative Khanna was talking about, the governor's race. We'll be talking about that when we come back with the great Mark Barabak. Don't go anywhere.